Hello and welcome to this introduction to Lisbon. Let's get right into it. So Lisbon, as you can see, is right in the middle of Portugal on its west coast. And as we zoom in here, what I want to first do is point out a couple of different regions in the greater Lisbon area that you might want to consider visiting. Most of this video will spend in downtown Lisbon, pointing out the different areas there. But just for general awareness, we're going to be jumping in here in just a moment. But Sintra, out in the northwest, this is where many of the most famous castles are. So you want to spend a day or probably a day on arranged tours. It's much more easy. In Sintra, which is very hilly. Down here, Cascais. Cascais is the Portuguese Riviera. Very beautiful beaches and expensive restaurants. But another great little place to spend a day or an evening. And Setúbal, down here in the southeast, is a wine-growing region. So you could find actually fully functioning and fantastic vineyards in this greater Setúbal area. There's beaches along the shore here. There's beaches on the shore here. But really what we're going to spend most of our time on is going into Lisbon itself. Your experience of Lisbon will very likely begin at the airport, which is just north of the city. Going from the airport into downtown Lisbon takes maybe 20-25 minutes, depending. An Uber will cost you about 10 euros. A normal taxi will be about double that. And let's go ahead and jump in even more as we get a little bit more closer to downtown. Famous bridge right here. This is made it looks very similar, of course, to the Golden Gate Bridge. So that's something worth seeing. And the Belém Tower out in the west, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But again, we're going to spend most of our time, and I think you'll end up spending most of your time here in what is basically downtown Lisbon. Now, I know on the screen right now you just see a bunch of marks of my favorite restaurants and favorite hotels. Stars, yellow stars are generally restaurants. Hearts, the pink hearts, are going to be hotels. And the green flags are just points of interest, which I can point out as we go along. It's a little difficult to make heads or tails of where are the neighborhoods when you kind of look at it from this view. A more helpful view, in order to look at the different areas of the city, is actually by going and looking at a terrain view of the city. So now look at it this way. Okay, you're seeing that there's actually a big hill right here. Indeed, there's a castle at the top of this hill, which I highly recommend you go and see, Castelo de San Jorge. So there's a big hill here. There's a big hill here, right? And then there's a hill back here, with this area being pretty flat in between. That's a better way to think, because it really does divide up the city rather nicely, and each one of those are basically neighborhoods. So we're going to start over on my right-hand side, which is the east of the city. This area of the city here, really just this hill. So starting from basically this road and heading east, and from the water and up, this is called the Alfama, and this is the historic part of Lisbon. When you walk through the side streets all in here, really all these side streets, all of which I highly recommend, you'll probably spend a day doing it, working your way eventually to the castle, but just really staying along the periphery. Everything around here, all the way up here as well, is filled with side streets, very, very small alleyways, and there are wine bars, there are outstanding restaurants, there are places to get glasses of wine. It's a really outstanding place to spend a day. Alfama. The Alfama is this area. It is the very kind of medieval, almost feels like the south of Spain, right? Granada. It's sexy. It's dark. It's romantic. It's a highly romantic part of the city. I'm going to go to the other neighborhoods, then we'll come back and talk about individual restaurants and such. As we move west, we come down to this area. We can see it's much flatter. You're basically between the two hills on either side of you. This area down here, this is Chiado up here, and this is Baixa. You'll see those words come up pretty frequently. But this area, what are you going to expect when you're walking around in this area here? You'll expect to see, there's actually a lot of shopping in this area. Clothes shopping, some of your basic staples and things that you'll need will be all in this area. Very, very cute, but very, very easy to navigate, obviously, because it's all basically on a grid. But this is much more. I always thought of this as much more of like, going shopping. H&M, for example, is in this area. But also a lot of hotels, tons of hotels. You won't find many hotels in Alfama. There are a couple, but they're generally very expensive, like this one. Great spot. You'll find a lot of mid-range and very reasonable hotels are right here in this neighborhood, including, I've got one right there, Hotel de Baixa, which I absolutely love. I highly recommend this spot. So consider staying in this region because you're really in the thick of it. So I'm going to keep moving west, though. And what we get to is this neighborhood right here. Oh, you can actually see the words I was just saying. Baixa Chiado. It's basically these two parts of the neighborhood. This area all up here, and I could say it's really bound by this corner. So there is a square right here, the Praça Luís de Camões. Forgive the pronunciation, but it's approaching accurate. This square, so basically from this corner right here, going down the road, maybe to about right here, and coming up the road, you can see I'm basically outlining a big square for you. Essentially, this area in particular is called Barrio Alto. Barrio Alto, and it is a outstanding nightlife area. And there's a place called Friends Barrio Alto, so you can see the words spelled out right there. This is the kind of place, especially in this corner in particular, where you don't have to choose a bar to go out to. Just walk there nearly any night, walk up and down these roads, and find a place that fits your vibe in that exact moment. Don't worry about the names, they're all fine. Most of this is people standing in these streets partying outside. It's a really lively area. Probably not the best place to stay if you happen to think, oh, I want to get a hotel in this neighborhood. It's probably not the best idea. But I've spent a lot of time out here. A really friendly, and some would say touristy, but it's kind of like just the most fun area. So definitely spend a night, or in fact maybe most of your nights, hanging out in Barrio Alto over there. As you come up a little bit, let's pull back out a moment. So what did we just say? We just saw the Alfama, which really stretches out even out to this way. We saw Baixa and Chiado, which is this sort of flatter area, which again, shopping, lots of hotels, but very sort of wide avenues and such. Then you saw Barrio Alto, which is really this area up here. Down here, you do have some really some nice areas and nice things to see in this area. So don't neglect it down here. There's a great bar right there, Tabacaria. And then the timeout market is very popular. I think gently overrated, but that's down here as well. So we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4 different neighborhoods. There are other areas. If you come right in this neighborhood right here, you're going to find a couple of interesting spots. This neighborhood in particular around Ginja and in here, this is very nice right here near O Marquês and Gambrinas. I had dinner there many times. So this area is nice, but just go a little bit more down this road. You can see I've already flagged it for you. If you want to see what are the areas that I would recommend not going, I don't recommend anything up here around this hospital. So really it's sort of shocking. Just go to here, and if you just go down the road, everything back here near Martin Moniz, I don't like. It's noticeably different. So it's sort of interesting that I like where these stars are. Everything out here is outstanding. Everything up here is so great. You can see little notes that I've left to myself. But go right around here near Martin Moniz. I don't like it. I don't recommend spending your time up here or anywhere up here. Now, saying that, there's a very famous restaurant, Ramiro, which is right here. And then right next to it is Cafe Clandestino, which is an outstanding cocktail bar. This area in particular, this will go away on my screen in a moment here. This area in particular is where a lot of the great Indian food, Indian, Pakistani, and such food in Lisbon is all up and down this road in particular, right here, some back here as well. So that's great. I definitely worth checking out. And again, this is one of my favorite cocktail bars in the city. but just everything in between down here, I really cannot recommend. Let's talk about a couple other areas. So here was Barrio Alto. As I come back up, Principe Real. That is an area that is, I believe, just basically right in this neighborhood right here. All of this clearly within walking distance of Barrio Alto. Great restaurants, very, very cute restaurants. And some of my favorites are right here. I'm looking for Churrasqueria de Paz. That's one of my favorite. Very almost old school, almost like a diner, worth seeing. So taking a walk down this main road and walking down here and coming all up in this area, absolutely worth it, worth seeing. Some really fantastic spots. The more north you go, as you see these main avenues, there is indeed main avenues leading all the way up to the Praça Marquês de Pombal. This is all fine. You could see it. Again, tons of hotels. Many of the hotels that you look at will probably end up being either on this main road, the Avenida de Liberdade, which is great, or it's going to be all up in this area. You can see where all of my marks are with the hearts. These are where a lot of the hotels are. Can you walk from here down to here, where there's a lot more happening, or in fact down here? Absolutely. I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, that might be a 30-minute walk. Maybe it's 20 minutes. Maybe 20 minutes. It's really not that bad of a walk. But you'll definitely notice it, that between here and down here and such, this area will kind of feel a little bit like a dead zone to you. There's plenty of things going on, but it's mostly hotels. A couple of fancy clothing chains are in this area as well. But it's not really where people go out. You don't see many people going out here. Again, with the occasional exception of some restaurants, there's indeed actually an outstanding speakeasy that's right there, the Red Frog Speakeasy. So this main avenue, which kind of leads from an area rich in hotels, that main avenue leads into kind of the heart of the city, which is down there. I myself have not spent any time in the surrounding areas over here. The only other area that I've been to is Campo de Urique. I'm probably not saying that correctly. This area is cute. There's an outstanding cocktail bar right there. If you want to check it out, I highly recommend it. Very, very sweet folks who run that cocktail bar. And Pessoa, a very famous writer from Portugal. His house was right there. Cute neighborhood. Check it out if you have extra time. I would not prioritize, though, spending your time in the neighborhood. Everything that's happening out west of the city, out here to my left, to the west. There's an area called the LX Factory. Worth it maybe if you have extra time, and you're probably going to be spending 3 days if you need it in downtown. But if you happen to have extra time, LX Factory, this is a whole complex that they completely renovated, and it's filled with art galleries, boutiques, some great restaurants, some beer gardens. So LX Factory is very popular. A lot of people in Lisbon will recommend that you go and visit the LX Factory, which again is not really a place in so much as it's a whole block of it's basically an arts center. So worth seeing if you have some extra time. As I keep going west, the monastery is a very famous attraction. A lot of people go there to see that, as is the Belém Tower. So you can go out there and see that. That's the tower that's actually appearing on the bottom of your screen right now. This walk along the water is nice, very nice. There's tons of restaurants. There's lots of monuments along the water here. So this is a nice way to spend a sunny day, is going out and seeing the monuments and having a beer on the water and seeing the tower and the monastery. But again, there's really no other reason you'd head anywhere else west of the city. And even heading up north as well, in my opinion, if you are prioritizing your time. Let's do a quick spin through of some of my favorite restaurants that I would highly recommend. I've been to each one of these. We'll start again in the Alfama. Starting all the way up here, Taberna Sal Grosso. Maybe there's one other competitor for best Portuguese food. Traditional Portuguese, not stuffy. It's not Michelin star, rather like, very fancy. It's very not fancy, but some of the highest quality most tastiest food in the entire city has got to be at Taberna Sal Grosso. Highly recommend it. They are sweethearts, the people who run the place, and you should definitely get a reservation. If you happen to stumble out of there having a really good time and it's late night and you want another drink, Tejo Bar is a small little bar, very, very tiny, with live music. So if you can find a spot in there, definitely check it out with some outstanding acts are playing at the Tejo Bar. So do feel free to check that out. Lucinda's, Melanie and I once had. Fado was playing there, so we drank wine and hung out there and listened to some fado, which is sort of the Portuguese gypsy music, the sort of, you'll understand it once you get in. Other places I do want to point out, Com Certeza, outstanding. That's the one that competes with Sal Grosso for some of the best food in the city. Definitely worth checking that out. And as I look at some of my different notes here, the other ones that I will point out is this one, O Trigueirinho, really cute restaurant run by a couple of Portuguese grandmas. So you should absolutely grab a seat in there. And this entire street and this whole area is filled with great fado bars and some outstanding restaurants. So definitely go and check that out. And you want a great sandwich stand, you've got to get a bifana, which is a pork sandwich, right there. As we make our way a little bit heading west, a very cool place to get a beer is this medieval tavern. It's a little campy, but really quite a cool spot. So definitely go and check that out. As I stay in Chiado for just a moment here, I am trying to look for, there was an outstanding spot. I'll come across it as we go on. O Fernandinho is a place run by an older man. Again, very traditional Portuguese food. This whole square is one of our favorite spots. This is the Carmo convent, is a ruined convent, which is a great sort of landmark. And the square right around here is a great place to hang out. And there's just tons of stuff all in that area, including that restaurant, the Duque Brew Pub. They brew their beer on site. Really cool people who run the place. So definitely, this is a staircase, this dotted line. It goes from sort of high elevation down to low elevation right here. Duque Brew Pub, excellent place to have a beer. Other places that I would point out in this general area include this one, O Português Chiado. This one is a fantastic lunch spot. Some very high quality clams that we had there. Really enjoyed that. I mentioned a bar before. This spot, As Salgadeiras, has a dish called the cod three ways. It's some take on that. And they cook cod in 3 different ways, and that's one plate for you. It should be a required dish. Everyone who arrives in Lisbon should start by going to this restaurant, which is very cavernous. It's very romantic. And order that dish and have yourself some cod. Done really well. The other places, if you want to check out, there's a good rooftop. Park rooftop is good. I don't highly recommend it, but it's good. So again, now we're in Barrio Alto, where I don't have much starred because again, just walk into this neighborhood and see what fits your vibe. Don't try to do too much research ahead of time. At a certain point, they all kind of look the same, and that's kind of the best part. I mentioned before Gambrinus. Gambrinus is a very old school. It's a bit stuffy. It's very fancy. Men were wearing jackets while they were there. But very high quality food, charming wait staff. I had a very elegant meal there, so I recommend it. But it's not down home, if I could put it that way. As you come up this street, you have a couple of outstanding bars. This one is very famous because it's filled with memorabilia. It's a museum almost unto itself, with tuxedoed or rather sort of uniformed wait staff. So it's a bar, yes, but it's like a museum. You have to check this out when you have a day. Other places as we're moving through here. This is a very famous chicken stand with one lady who runs it, and there's always a line, but if you happen to catch it at the right time, this is some of the best frango, the best chicken, grilled chicken, in the entire city. And as I come back down, I mentioned this place, Churrascaria da Paz, is a very hole in the wall, very kind of blue collar, uh, pork, chicken, sausages, fish. The wine is incredibly cheap. You will not be visually impressed when you walk in until you look at the food or when you taste the food. It's some of the best food in the city as well. I highly, highly, highly recommend that. With that, I think you've got a pretty good understanding. You're seeing other places I've starred. I've generally only starred places that I've been to and I can recommend. But with that, you have a pretty solid understanding of what to expect in Lisbon, and I hope you enjoy your stay. Thanks so much.